and welcome back. In case you're new here, my name is Simon, otherwise known as pansymolars, and I really like to talk about books, so that's what I'm gonna be doing today. Today, I have a whole stack of books here next to me, and this is my summer TBR pile. I did one of these videos last summer, and I did not read, I genuinely did not read a single book that I listed in that video. Like, if I'm being so honest, I think I might have started maybe 2 of them, and that was it. Oops. To be fair, I look back on that video and I'm like, there is no way realistically I was ever going to read that much in like 4 months. Like, that is just not a thing that I could do, I don't think. Especially not with series. I picked so many series out, and it just, that takes up a lot of brain capacity for me, and yeah, no, that was not a smart thing for me to do, or a realistic thing for me to do at all. So the first book on my summer TBR is Stephen King's The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. I've had this book for a number of years, and I have read the first chapter, I think, and I never just made it past that. And it's short, it's tiny. As you can see, the fact that I can hold it like this, it's a tiny book. It is just over 300 pages. I should be able to finish this quite quickly. And, you know, it's got a summer vibe to it. That's a thing that I meant to mention earlier. I picked a lot of these books specifically for my summer TBR because of the vibes that they have, because of themes that they have, or tropes that they deal with, and that I feel like are kind of summery. So, yeah. I am a huge Stephen King fan. If you know me, you know that I fucking love Stephen King. I have so many of his books that I just have not read. So, we're gonna start reading those fucking books that I have not read this summer, and we're starting with The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. The second book on my summer TBR is actually a reread because I'm supposed to be seeing the musical adaptation of this summer, and that is, of course, The Outsiders. I've read this. I did not have to read this for school. When I was in high school, my grade was split into 2 different classes, and I was not part of the group that read The Outsiders. I read it anyways because I'm a fucking nerd. But yeah, and I didn't watch the movie until, like, I want to say, like, my senior year of high school. They read this book when we were freshmen. This is another short one. This is what? 180 pages. Like, come the fuck on. I'm gonna finish this in, like, a day. I have also just been kind of wanting to revisit this book because, again, it's been years since I read it. And yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I'm supposed to be going to see the musical production of this that is currently playing in Toronto this summer, and so I would like to reread the book before then, just for funsies. So the next book that I picked is Camp Damascus by Chuck Tingle. I am so fascinated by Chuck Tingle. I've never read any of his work, but I follow him on Instagram, and every time I see him post about his sentient object erotica, I am just so endlessly amazed. I think he's also the person who wrote the trans femme Harry Potter, and I just think it's really fun that that's, like, his range, that he can write that and then also sentient object erotica, and then he's also, like, a well-known, like, queer horror writer. I think that that's really awesome. This is about a conversion camp, which is a theme that I fully unintentionally have, like, just realized I've been kind of drawn towards a lot in media lately, and I don't know why that is, but there's this book, and there's another book in my TBR pile that is also about conversion camp, and I think it was because, well, back in April, I think when I got this, I was like, oh, it would be fun for me to do, like, a deep dive on, like, horror movies and horror books and horror media in general that, like, involve conversion camp as, like, a location for where everything's taking place, and, like, why it is that this is so popular in queer horror that we keep seeing conversion camp. But then, like, I sat and I thought about it for like 5 seconds, and I was like, I don't think I need to do a deep dive on that. I think it's pretty obvious why that is a theme that keeps coming up in queer horror. Like, gee, why in our day and age do people still talk about conversion camp as a thing that is so scary? Like, let's use our brains for a second, and it's very obvious why that is. But yeah. I also am obsessed with this cover, by the way. I don't know if you can't really see it the best in this lighting, but there's like these shiny dragonflies. You can see them. And it's like, oh, the colors are just, oh, it's so gorgeous. I am a sucker for a book with a good cover. And this is that. Next up. I am reading this because I reread one of this author's other books earlier this year, and I was like, wow, do all of his main characters who are teenage boys talk like that? And this is the most summary of his works. This is An Abundance of Catherines by John Green. I reread Will Grayson earlier this year. And I fucking love that book. Am I the biggest fan of John Green's Will Grayson? No, not particularly. But that was a reread because I read that book when I was a teenager, or when I was, actually no, I think I read that book when I was in like the 6th grade, which is insane age to have been reading that fucking book, by the way. Don't let your 11-year-olds read John Green books. It will fuck them up for the rest of their lives, and I am living proof of this. But this is the one of his books that I own, I think, all of his YA fiction, and this is the only one that I never read when I was a kid. And I don't know why that is. I know it takes place during a road trip, and that is why I thought it was summery. So that is also why I picked this, but, yeah. I know that this is about a road trip, and it's about a guy who keeps dating girls named Catherine, hence the title. Yeah. Next on the list is my other, conversion camp book. It's Cuckoo by Gretchen Felker Martin, who is my favorite author, as the time of making this video, or at least she's one of them. I have right over my shoulder, I have both of her other books, and she just announced that she's coming out with a new book next year, and I'm so excited. It sounds so interesting, and the cover is also gorgeous. Super excited to read this. I have read both of her other books. Again, they're right over my shoulder. Manhunt and Black Flame, and Manhunt changed my fucking life, and Black Flame might genuinely be one of my favorite books I've ever read. Like, I loved that book. It was so good. I read it in like one sitting on a train ride, and I was like, I was reading it like this so that I was making sure that the people who were sitting in the seats behind me couldn't look through the cracks in the headboards and like see the shit that is on the page of the book that I'm reading, because I was like cringing myself out at the sexual content in that book. Not in a bad way, it was just that I was like, wow, I can't believe I'm reading this in public. What is wrong with me? Anyways, next up is a book that there's like another ongoing theme here, and that is romance novels. I feel like the summer is the perfect time to be reading romance novels. It's just kind of, you know, it's feel good, you know, the weather's nice. You don't want to be reading depressing shit all the fucking time, because like, what's the point? And I recently acquired a copy of this from my good friend Hannah. Shout out Hannah. And that is One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. I read this is also a reread, because I read this when I was in middle school, I think when it was first published, and I borrowed it from the library. And this is another case of, why the fuck was I reading this at like the ripe age of like 13? Anyways, yeah, I'm excited to reread this. I love Casey McQuiston. I haven't read much of their work. I have Red, White, and Royal Blue right there, and I really want to read their newest book. The one with the blue cover that I can't think of the title of it right now, but it's got the two faceless blob guys on the cover. Yeah, I'm excited to read this. I remember it being very sweet when I read it the first time, and it was very endearing to me, and yeah. We're about to take a really hard left turn with this next one, but it is, the next pick for my summer TBR is Where Are Your Boys Tonight? The Oral History of Emo's Mainstream Explosion by Chris Payne. I don't really have much to say about this. I have been meaning to read this book for a while, and I've owned this copy of it for maybe like going on 2 years now, and it just, in case you can tell, just based off of the way that I look, I was emo in high school, and I listened to a lot of alternative music, and this book has, I believe, basically like all of the bands that I listened to when I was 17 years old. The guys from those bands are interviewed in this book, and Gerard Way is on the cover. So, like, I couldn't not. It just, yeah. I had to read it eventually, and last summer I read Mark Hoppus's memoir. He's one of the guys from Blink-182, and so I figured I would keep up the theme, and I would do maybe one emo band book a summer, even though technically Blink-182 is not an emo band, and technically none of the bands in this book are either, but, well, more or less. This book is called The Oral History of Emo's Mainstream Explosion, so. That is also the only nonfiction that I picked out for this. I feel like every time I do TBR for something, I'm always so aware of how much nonfiction I pick, because I did not read any nonfiction for ages, and then I became an adult, and I was like, it is actually kind of weird that I don't read any nonfiction. I read an abundance of nonfiction, and it put me into a reading slump. Oopsies! So the next pick is, I'm missing one book from the series, but I do plan on getting it soon, because I got a gift card for my birthday. But that is the Simon Snow books by Rainbow Rowell. I read the first one beginning of high school, and I never read the second one, and I very clearly have not read the third one. But Fangirl, the book that kind of like is where the story of Simon Snow comes from, was my favorite book for many years when I was in middle school, because I really saw myself in the main character. And yeah, I remember this took me a while to get into, because it's divided into very many chapters, but they're like very small. Like 85 chapters before you hit the epilogue. And it also switches perspectives a lot, which is another thing that is kind of a pain in the butt with a book that is 89 chapters, but you know what? It is what it is. And this isn't even the biggest book in the series. The third one is like this and then some. Like, that book is ridiculously huge, but the main reason that I picked this as a summer TBR book is because of the second book, is because of Wayward Son. Because this is a summer book. It's yellow on the cover. They're dressed for summer. It's a road trip story. It's a summer read. I couldn't not pick it, and then I figured I would put the third book also on this TBR, even though I don't own it yet, because I just figured I would just wrap up the series and then be done with it. And then the last book on this list is another one that I've had for quite some time that I've never gotten around to, and that is Blaine for the Win by Robbie Couch. I bought this when it released, like, was at the bookstore the day it came out and picked up a... So I believe this should be first edition. And I think I started reading it and I just got distracted with, you know, the things that 14-year-olds tend to get distracted with. So I never finished it. This is YA. I have quite a few YA picks here, actually. We're gonna see how I deal with reading YA, because I do feel like every time I read YA now that I've read so much adult work, like I spent so much of my teen years reading nothing but adult books, I feel like now as an adult, whenever I go to revisit something that I liked as a kid, it's always kind of hard for me to get into. So we'll see how that goes, but I am looking forward to reading this because I think it's a very sweet story. I'm looking forward to reading this. It's another romance, that's all I gotta say about it. So that is my summer TBR. A couple little bonus books that I do want to read if I have the time is I want to reread Chris Colfer's Weirder Than Fanfiction, which I have up on the shelf right here, and then I also want to reread the Aristotle and Dante duology, which I have the first one there, and then I have the second book on physical audiobook on my CD shelf over here. And I also want to reread Stephen King's The Body if I have the time for that. That is my extensive summer TBR. I hope you enjoyed hearing about it. Leave a comment telling me a book you want to read this summer, and yeah, do the usual YouTube things, you know, like and subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!